Hey, Michael J.
So there's some good Strixhaven stuff, and the more I look at the spoiler, the more I'm just reminded of when we were looking at those commands a few weeks ago, and you saying that this might be a format that you might want to play. Like, it really seems like a format that somebody might want to play.
Yeah, there's a lot of sweet stuff already. Where's your eye starting?
All right,
I like the Lorehavens, I guess.
I like
Loreholds.
The cheesiest card. I love this card so much, and I want it to be super good, but I don't know what you think about it. It's an enchantment for 2. RW, Lorehold Excavation. Do you know this one?
Yeah.
Tell me what you think about it, and then I can gush about this card.
Well, so for RW, you get, at the beginning of your end step, you mill a card, and then you find out what you get. If it was a land, you gain a life. Otherwise, you do a damage to each opponent. And then it has the second ability, which I'm guessing you're kind of digging too, which is 5 and exile a creature card from your graveyard to create a tapped 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. So, just straight up, it kind of gives you 3 things incrementally. Only a little bit, but 3 things incrementally. And then it's got this 4th option that when the game stretches. So incrementally, you're getting every turn you're getting to mill 1, which can have some value anyway with graveyard synergies, right? Like if you have anything that gets played out of the graveyard, if you have anything you want to that counts the amount of stuff in the graveyard, there's a ton of graveyard mechanics. And red and white normally never get something like that. So this is particularly radical in that regard to begin with. But then the kicker you get, the little cookie, call it 40% of the time you gain a life and 60% of the time you deal a damage. That's like pretty solid, right?
Yeah, like even before going to the 5 exile a creature card thing, like I looked at this card and I'm like, I think ever since Alpha, people have been playing Howling Minds, right? They've been playing Howling Minds in lock decks, Howling Minds so you kill your opponent when you have an Island Sanctuary, Turbo Stasis decks, Prison decks, they have Howling Minds, right? But there's always been this quest for the personal Howling Mind. In the past, personal Howling Minds that were good all cost like 6, right? Like the Immortal Sun or something. I'm like, is this any kind of a personal Howling Mind?
Nope. Next question.
So I think it kind of is. Let me make an argument, right? So first is milling a card. Is milling a card drawing a card?
No.
No, except if you fill your deck with like Ox of Agonis and Elspeth, Sun's Nemesis, and, Phoenix of Ash, then...
That's not what drawing a card is. That's milling a card.
Yeah, but that expands expands your hand. Kind of, right? So,
yeah, we counted that. When you mill, you get the marginal utility of whatever you mill that has graveyard interactions.
So the thing about drawing a card that's better is that you can get land. In this case, if you mill a land, it sucks. Like, I don't really want to gain the 1 life, and I can't imagine any situations where I would play this card on purpose to gain the life. Right? Like,
what? Why? That's not hard to imagine.
No, I mean, I wouldn't play the card on purpose for that. Like, it'd be like, all right.
Why not?
I had this card in my deck, and it's good sometimes, but I really wouldn't just do it on purpose. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It's the sum package. I think the life gain's good. A little incremental life gain can go a long way.
But for 2 mana versus 3 mana, right? So, look, if you look at a card like Sulfur...
versus 3 mana. I'm just saying, compared to 2 mana, you can see if you get 2 mana worth of value.
Oh, so in my opinion, I really like this card. I think if you have enough time, right? Because this is a bad card if the game ends immediately, right? But if you're planning to play 10 more turns or something, it might be a really cool card. So, like, people play cards that cost, like, 3 mana to deal 2 to the opponent every turn, right? This costs a full mana less. It does only 1 instead of 2, sometimes. But you get all these other abilities.
Well, yeah, but, like, it doesn't do a damage to your opponent when you gain a life, so it's not like the other ability helped you.
Yeah, I don't like that one. That's what I already said. I don't like that one. But I really like some of the other stuff. And then there's the 5. I think the 5 is cool.
So I think this is a super cool card. I love the design. Why would this be good?
I think
okay, so do you think that the in Kaldheim you can get for 3 mana, drain your opponent for 1 every turn, right? And that's like obviously different colors or whatever, but just to get an idea of the sense of value, like how much value are you getting for your mana? Does Dogged Pursuit? That's not even. I guess it's 4 mana, but like Dogged Pursuit gives you a life every turn, and your opponent loses a life every turn, right? It's like double the effectiveness of this.
Yeah, but
now it doesn't mill yourself, but Dogged Pursuit is not in the zip code of playable.
Yeah, but
in Constructed, right?
2 mana versus 4 mana is a mazillion miles away from each other.
Are you going to play Dogged Pursuit at 2?
Drain for 2 every turn?
No, drain for 1 every turn. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life.
It depends what colors this imaginary 2 mana one
Let's
is.
Let's say it's red-white.
In context. So I drain for 1 every turn. I can imagine playing it. I don't know if I would whiz-bang want to play it, no, but I can imagine playing it.
And that's twice as good. There's no way that milling yourself every turn is worth as much as draining your opponent for 1, right? Like, or at least the other half of the damage or whatever. I mean, even if you think they're somewhat comparable, this card's fine. It's not like it's that embarrassing or anything. It's just isn't like the activated ability is pretty mana intensive, right? It's nice to have, but like, isn't this card more of a fringe? Like, in a perfect world, if fair decks were good, this could be a cool thing to have one of.
Oh, no. I think that if fair decks are good, that particular kinds of fair decks and fair matchups have to be good for this card to be good. But in those situations, I would want to have more than 1 copy in my 75.
It just has such diminishing returns. You're saying you just want to build around the self-mill, aren't you?
Well, there's 2 things. One, like, it depends on how big the format you're talking about is, right? Like
Standard.
So the thing is, I think that there are some arguments you make that this is much worse in Standard than it is in formats that have maybe like Lava Darts or Firebolts, right?
No way! The power level is just way too low. You're not going to be able to leverage this enough to make this a modern card.
Oh, I don't know, man.
Famous last words.
There are, like, so many scenarios where I wish that I just had, like, a 0 casting cost way to set off my Spectacle, or I just need to do, like, the last 1 or 2 points of damage, but I had actually had a spell that got spent on something, like, way earlier. I can totally imagine this card being playable. Like, straight up playable in bigger formats. It's not the kind of card that screams, I'm the best card. I don't think it's the best card. I think that it is a card. This is exactly the kind of card that I love to think about, that I love to potentially build around, that like becomes a signature card for some deck that actually ends up being pretty good.
Well, only when it has a good rate. Right now, this one doesn't have that good of a rate. But yeah, when it's a good rate, I agree with you, man.
I don't know, man. When I'm winning a Q someday, we'll lower the bar, and my deck is full of Elspeths and Oxes and this thing. You're gonna.
That is the way to do it. If you're gonna make
your
this,
hat,
I could. It's not a lock, and I completely agree that if this card ends up, if this is like a respectable tournament card, it is the self-mill that pushes it over. Because all the other things are good. They're positive things. You just don't get enough of them reliably enough. Like, you get for 5 mana, getting a tapped 3/2 isn't even very mana efficient, and it's fine when the opportunity cost is low. Great. That's cool. But, like, it's not like it's priced to move.
Yeah, so...
And then the life gain, obviously you know how hard that is to, maybe there's a different kind of Boros deck. It could be. But, like, valuing both the occasional life gain and the occasional damage and not getting to control which is which, the reason the mill is so good is because at least you can plan for it, and it's got synergies that can be leveraged.
Well, I was just thinking, like, obviously this is a little bit different because this is a spell slot, not a lance slot. But, like, if you get this down early against a control-ish deck, like, not a control deck that's going to, like, whiz-bang beat you in 1 turn, but, like, the kind that, often get played in Pioneer or something.
It is terrible against a control deck.
It's not terrible against a control deck.
It depends on what you're comparing it to. It's not terrible at all compared to a 2-mana removal spell, right? Like, it's actively good compared to that. Whereas it's terrible compared to, like, say, a card that does something efficiently.
So I think, like, if you compare this card, and again, I'm saying it's weird because you're comparing it to a land. If you compare this to, like, a Ramming Up Ruins, like, this is a Ramming Up Ruins-like effect in a bunch of different ways. If you play this early, like, I don't know, like, I guess it's weird.
If this produced a red mana, if you could tap this for a red, I think it would be as good as Ramming Up Ruins, potentially.
If you could also tap it for a red, this card would be unbelievable, right? Like, there's also be a Signet, right? So, but
that's part of the beauty of Ramming Up Ruins is that you can just tap it for a red.
But I'm saying, like, its damage output will be higher than 2, and its mana utilization will be higher than Ramming Up Ruins in a protracted game, right? Like, I do imagine being a control deck and losing to the 3/2s that are coming out that I can't counter, that I have to use real cards on. Like, I don't know. That's not an attractive situation. Like, if you use the rest of your cards to, like, let's say you don't play it on turn 2, right? You play one of those games, you're just like, here's 2 guys. You have to answer both of the guys. If you sweep, you're not going to get that much advantage, and then I'm going to have my mana back. And I just use one of the windows when I wasn't using my mana to just play this, and it resolves. Because you don't think that it's very good, right? Control opponent, it resolves. It very well might beat you. If my other cards are just doing their thing. It's just a card. I think it has.
You're talking about the world where you can spend 5 mana on Yorion.
Well, Yorion's very good. Yorion, like, when people pull off a Yorion with multiple permanents in play, yeah, like, fair beatdown decks tend to lose those games, right? But there are a whole other class of games where fair beatdown decks get the opponent down low, and they just need something to push them over the threshold. And this can help push them down the threshold a bunch of different ways. Like, I don't know.
We will see.
I think this card is better than your imagination. I also don't think this is the best card. I just think it's an exciting card to think about.
I would hope not. We shall see. I don't think it's a 0, but I think it's comparable to. We'll see. I don't think it's that good, but I'm open to the possibility. It would be fun if it was. There's some other, I guess, Boros cards that are kind of interesting. Kind of a loud one. The Big Daddy. What do you think of the Elder Dragon Velomachus Lorehold? 5 red white for a 5/5 flying vigilance haste. And when Velomachus Lorehold attacks, you look at the top 7 of your library and you can cast an instant or sorcery with mana value less than or equal to his their power from among them without paying its mana cost, but the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order.
I don't know. Like, I looked at this card, and to me, I don't like it nearly as much as some of the other Elder Dragons that they revealed. To me, this just is like, all right, this is a 5/5 for 7. It certainly has a lot of text on it, but, like, what do you expect for 7? That's kind of the zone that I'm in. I'm like, all right, I have, like, a hasting flying creature for 7 mana. I expect it to do something spectacular. This does something pretty spectacular.
Well, can we agree? Like, let's evaluate how, when you look at the top 7 of your library and get an instant or sorcery of your choice, that's, like, without question worth at least 2 mana, right?
I mean, it is a powerful effect.
And then if you are getting to then play it for free, and we'll say it's worth 2 mana because you can only get things that are 5 or less, at least in the base case. And then you get to play it for free. Well, that obviously depends, but you're getting a Black Lotus, right? Yeah, that's... Like, how much of a Black Lotus? But on the average, you're probably getting a Black Lotus.
I think that's worth well more than 2 mana.
Sure. So my point is that when you attack and you get both, it's kind of a draw 3.
Well, like, let's imagine, like, the silliest situations, right? Where I'm going to say, like, let's say you have a Beacon of Destruction in your deck, right? Like, for sake of argument, because that's just a card I can remember the name of that's the appropriate casting costs, right? So, like, all right, I'm attacking with my 5-power dragon, and then I reveal a Beacon of Destruction, which conveniently will shuffle back into my library, right? So that's 10. I mean, like, so the turn that I cast this, like, they're on basically, like, a 1-turn clock. Because that conveniently shovels
Yeah,
itself
but you're
back
not
into
just
the deck,
playing
right?
Beacon. Yeah, but you're not playing Beacon of Destruction. You got to compare it to cards you play.
If I'm in the world where I'm playing Velomachus Lorehold, I'm pretty sure I'm going to play weird cards just because Velomachus Lorehold can cast them.
I
Aren't
guess. I mean, isn't it kind of sweet for red-white to have like such a good card drawer?
But like, what is red-white, right? Like I have played all different kinds of red-white decks.
Command, dude. Lorehold command with this.
Patrick, I'm just saying, like, I've played super fast Boros red-white decks. I've played the slow board control. Here are all my Planeswalker red-white decks.
Mid-range Boros, big mid-range. That's what this is for, big mid-range.
Like, this is bigger than the ceiling on what I would imagine a big mid-range Boros card is.
Well, this is a new kind of Boros. This is a kind of Boros that gets its roots from things like Abzan and Mardu and Jund. And not just any Mardu, but specifically the more mid-rangey Planeswalker style. This is a bigger Boros deck, and that's one of the big things they're really leaning into is this is such a different take on Boros than we've seen for a while, and that's one of the things that's most exciting about this set. Tell you what, let's jump to something a little cheaper, because I know it's kind of hard to be sure of how good is a 7-cost creature going to even be in the new world.
So I was thinking if I were going to play this is my red or white splash, probably red splash in a green deck. Right?
See, I think you're still just imagining the old world. This is a new world, man. This is a new kind of Boros.
Okay, so give me another thing to chew on.
Okay. How about the Radiant Scroll Wielder? 2 red-white for a 2/4 Dwarf Cleric. Instant and sorcery spells you control have lifelink. And at the beginning of your upkeep, exile an instant or sorcery card at random from your graveyard. You may cast it this turn. And if a spell cast this way would be put in your graveyard, exile it instead.
I was just thinking for about an hour about this card earlier the day. I stared at it, and the math problem I put into my head is, when is this good? So it is not what you would term, I think, like a Mull Drifter, right? Because you need a turn before it can start getting value. This is like a small Elder Gargaroth. Is that a fair comparison or no?
Well, the one thing, the caveat would be that you can play this and then instantly parlay. Well, you can immediately parlay that top ability if you're playing a kind of deck. Like if you just play some kind of Pyroclasm or Deal 3 Sweeper, you can just gain a bazillion life the same turn you play it in some spots.
Okay, that's fair.
But yes, it's mostly a Baneslayer.
Yeah, so the thing is, like, I think that this card is the kind of card where in certain kinds of matchups, right? So if you were playing against, like, sake of argument, a fair green-white deck, and you untapped with this might be unbeatable, right? Like, it screams unbeatable to me. I actually, went to the trouble of looking up Lightning Helix and War Leader's Helix, because I was just like, oh, those cards that have lifelink, they're a Lightning Bolt with lifelink, or a Stoke the Flames with lifelink, don't actually have lifelink. So you gain double life gain from those. That's super cool. I don't think it's a good card in general. I think it's a great card in certain situations.
So let's walk through this for a second. It's a 2/4 for 4, not close.
Not close.
Right, not close. But a 2/4 for 4 that made you draw a card? Not good enough.
No,
but not embarrassing. A 2/4 for 4 that made you draw a card and gain 3 life? You'd at least take that meeting. You'd take that phone call, right? There's an amount. Maybe it's 4 life. Whatever it is. This is a card that's a 2/4 that if your deck is built right for it, you're drawing a card, an extra card at the start of each of your turns. At the beginning of your upkeep. You're effectively drawing a card, and it's a card with selection. Remember, it is a random card, but if you're building your deck right, you're playing with cards that can be used proactively. And even though you have to spend the mana on it, it is with selection. You're drawing a spell, a sorcery or instant. That's really good, right? Like but
it also requires 2 things that I thought were a bit restrictive on it from a deck building cost standpoint. One, this screams to be put into a particular deck, right? Like you can't
the new Boros deck. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
No, you think that this card is going to be good in the same in the same deck as that 7 casting cost Boros Dragon?
Yep.
I don't know. I was imagining, like, I would be so extreme that,
This
like,
one even has good types.
all my stuff for this deck would be, like, Thrilling Discovery. Like, I would want to so max out on instants and sorceries just so that I could...
You can only get one a turn.
Yeah, but... like,
you don't want to dink them. You don't want to have them all just be dinking around doing nothing. You want them to be proactive, and you want them to be accomplishing stuff.
Well,
dude, all I want to do is get back a Lightning Helix, man.
I don't know, like...
Get back the command. The Lorehold command.
My bar for a forecasting cost creature, I need the payoff to be pretty good. Like, I would want to spend time with Thrilling Discovery to get stuff into the graveyard just so that I was ready when Radiant Scroll Wielder
It's too easy. It's too easy. All you need to do is have a single spell in your graveyard. It's actually kind of dope if you have exactly one. That way you get exactly what you want. And then on your next turn, just play one. Like, you can just control it as long as you keep it low.
I can see that.
Additionally, all you want is to leverage the damage. If this card is good, it's because you're gaining 1 billion life. This is another version. Remember that 1/4 lifelink that makes you double your life gain?
Yeah, so...
That's this, except it draws you a card every turn.
Let me think about this for a second. Like, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I also think that, like, the fact that you're gaining life and all that, it also requires a specific context. Like, at least if I resolve that...
I think this card has to require very specific context. I agree. This isn't just put it in every deck. Not close.
I think it's only good in certain matchups. Like, I just don't want it in general.
Well, so is that 1/4 life link that doubles life gain. But this card draws a card every turn. So you get to just main deck a little bit of this if you want. But it's also a dope sideboard card.
I think it's mostly... This falls into the category, if you untap with this in certain matchups, it's an unbeatable sideboard card. It's an unbeatable sideboard card that also makes them play another 10 turns, which is mind-breaking for people.
Dude, it's so sick if you ever combine this with a AoE deal 3. It's just unreal with Deafening Clarion, you know?
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Both ways.
I know. I'm trying to tell you, man. I think that you got to look at this card as a life gain card that draws you a card every turn.
Oh, no. You and I are not disagreeing on that. I think this is the kind of card that if they can't handle, like, just killing a 4 toughness creature, you are going to annihilate them. Like I just imagine a green-white deck who's just like, and they're not even losing on the battlefield, right? But they've lost. You know, that is the thing that I'm imagining where this card will be good. But there are just so many decks that just don't care about it, right? Like Sultai decks. Like,
yeah, but they care about you drawing a card every turn.
I mean,
that's the part that's so sick, is that the people where life gain isn't good care about you drawing a card every turn. So it's not like this isn't a must-kill card. Now, admittedly, it's just a guy that dies to Doomblade, right? But, like, if you're playing a deck of other heavy hitters, it's not like Lorehold, Velomachus Lorehold isn't a Baneslayer himself. You got to be playing a deck with a lot of Baneslayers, but fortunately the Boros cards in this set really lend themselves well to this.
See, I think that guys with haste, like, Velomachus Lorehold, like, yeah, technically he's a Baneslayer, but, like...
Yeah, but you still want to kill him.
He's
in many ways
real
he's a
quick.
Titan.
He's a Titan.
Yeah, but you still want to kill... Yeah, you still kill the Primeval Titan, man.
I mean, yes. Well, so I guess if you immediately kill a Primeval Titan, it did damage to you. If you immediately kill Velomachus Lorehold, it didn't. Right?
And then... Plarg, Dean of Chaos is a Boros card that might be a little bit more up your alley. This is that flip card, double face card, 1 in a red, 2/2, legendary Orc Shaman. So you can tap and discard a card to draw a card, no mana needed. You can pay 4 red and tap to kind of cascade 3. And then the flip side is a Lord, Augusta, Dean of Order, a legendary human cleric. It's a 1/3. Other tapped creatures you control have +1/+0, and other untapped creatures you control have +0/+1. And whenever you attack, untap each creature you control, then tap any number of creatures you control.
Yeah, Augusta Dean of Order, I think I'm going to have to play around with before I just kind of get a feel for that card. Because I look at that first line, and it's just like Offensive Crusade, that's cool. Defensive Castle? I don't know. Like, I think I can read.
Well, it's not just no. You're missing it though. It's not just offensive Crusade, offensive Orcish Oriflamme, defensive Castle. It's offensive whichever one you want, defensive whichever one you want. Because when you attack, your creatures are still attacking. You can just have them end up untapped or tapped, depending on if you want to have damage or if you want them to have functional vigilance with +1/+0.
Yeah, this is a really cool card.
And then, so it's already a Lord of sorts, but you have to be in the door for Plarg, Dean of Chaos, I think. Like, it's a 2/2 for 2 that loots. That's already interesting.
Plarg, Dean of Chaos is sweet.
And then the fact that you can tap it 5 to Cascade, this card seems excellent. This card's, playable without any white.
Oh, for sure.
You could easily splash white to support the Augusta, because it's not like Augusta's even off message. It's a great card tactically in some fast low-to-the-ground Boros decks.
So, Plarg, Dean of Chaos, the colon is after discard a card, so you actually have to discard the card, right? So
yeah.
Okay.
You don't get to cheat the system totally, but you do get to go great with all those graveyard synergies you were talking about.
Oh, I think this card is fantastic. I mean, it's just a 2/2 for 2, which is maybe, if not ahead of the curve in 2021 for a red card. It's that's about what you're getting, right? 4 power and toughness combined for 2 mana, and it's got a bunch of abilities. I think this card is whiz-bang going to get played, for sure.
Totally.
And not in white decks. You can play it in a red-green deck. You can play it in a mono-red deck. I mean, it could be in a white deck, but certainly doesn't have to.
Yeah, I think that you got to be in for Plarg, but I also think you're going to be surprised. One, you're the type of guy who's going to love Augusta, because your opponents, half of them are going to have no idea what's going on.
Oh, I don't even know what's going on. So I can have it in my deck.
Think about it. This card is the card for, if you're imagining low to the ground Boros, this card is for you. I also think you could play it in a bigger Boros deck. It's just a fantastic card. Big fan.
Just while we're on the some of the modal double face cards, there are 2 that I wanted to make sure we talked about.
Okay.
One of them, I think if you're just in for the front side, you don't even have to hit the backside, and the backside might be interesting anyway. Valentin, Dean of the Vein. How do you feel about this one?
Okay, so walk me through it.
Valentin, Dean of the Vein is B for a 1/1 legendary creature, Vampire Warlock. They just let anybody teach at Strixhaven, apparently.
Warlock is such an interesting creature type here, but anyway, keep going.
I mean, he's an Oathbreaker. That's what Warlock means. But he has Menace and Lifelink, right? So he has a whole other paragraph after that, but let's start with B for a 1/1 Menace and Lifelink.
Not good enough.
I don't know. I remember when I first saw the card Healer's Hawk, I was just like, this card is unbelievably good. And then I realized it was in the same standard format as Goblin Chain Whirler. And then it won the Pro Tour anyway. And then it went on to have a good career in post-Goblin Chain Whirler world. I don't think that is so much worse.
Well, so first of all, Healer's Hawk benefited from synergies because of life gain. Second of all, I'm not saying it's so much worse. I'm just saying it's not quite good enough. I think this is a good card. I just think you need more than the 1/1 Menace Lifelink.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a legend. You can take advantage of that. 1-cost legend's hard to come by. It's a vampire. That's good types. But then there's this ability. If a non-token creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. When you do, you can pay 2. And if you do, you get a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with when this creature dies, you gain a life.
So
I actually think that's a deceptively good ability.
There's 3 abilities there, right? One of them is you're already messing with their graveyard. Right, so imagine that they had a creature that they, maybe want to get back from the graveyard because it has escape or something like that. Exiling it instead is already good, right?
Agree. If that was the end of it, then I think you'd have enough. I think a 1/1 legendary Vampire Warlock that's a 1/1 Menace Lifelink that exiles opponents' non-token creatures that die, I think that would be good enough. But keep going. You can pay 2, and if you do, you get a 1/1 that when it dies, you gain a life. You get a Tarpan.
Yeah, now I'm just not that I'm going to sit around with 2 mana open all the time, but maybe sometimes
it's nice to have.
It's very nice to have.
I was already in. It's not like this is the biggest thing, but it's a thing, and it helps.
And it costs 1.
Good deal. Now, let's talk about the backside, because having your 1-drop be able to be kicked as a 4-drop is a very attractive option. What do you get for 2 green?
A 4/4.
And whenever you gain life, you can pay 1. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, and those creatures gain trample until end of turn. And it's a legendary human druid. That's got good types too, but a 4/4 for 4 that when you gain life lets you put a counter on all your stuff. How is that not great in the right deck?
Well, here's the thing. If you're talking about this as like a forecasting cost kicker on Valentin, you know for a fact, assuming you can summon a single black Pip, that you have life gain in your deck. You have it 2 different ways. You have it from the Tarpan ability on those 1/1 pests, and then you have the lifelink on Valentin, who, by the way, is difficult to block.
Yeah, strong agree, and great to put counters on.
Oh, wow, yeah. Outstanding to put counters on. So it's contained
it's a fantastic combo with itself. And I think you should play 4 of this card in this kind of a deck.
Same.
This card's awesome. Like, it's I also the black-green I guess guild or whatever from this, they've got a lot of these Tarpan making things, and there's other things that value the life gain as well. But this card already builds a deck, man. Like, this is it. This is the beginning of a new archetype. And that's kind of like, you mentioned that Healer's Hawk. It's unreal that the Healer's Hawks with itself, and so much better than a Ajani's Pride mate.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, this one, whiz bang, winner. What else? What's the other one you were talking about?
So, Wandering Archaic, this card is weird. Like, just weird. Like, I look at it and I'm like, all right, I'm a little unsettled by this card. But I feel like one side, I can imagine having to do it, but never wanting to. And the other side, I'm like, I understand that this card is not actually too good, but it feels too good, right? It might not even be that good at all, but the front side is 5 for a 4/4 creature avatar, so colorless. It's not an artifact, it's just colorless, 5 for a 4/4, and it looks super weird, and it has the ability when an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, they may pay 2. If they don't, you may copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy, right? Like, so this just still dies to Doomblade, right? But man, it seems like it could be really good in the right spots.
I don't know, man. But you're just talking about the front side? 5 costs 4/4, and then your opponent just has to pay 2 each time they play a sorcery instant, or you get to copy it?
I mean, you say just like... Remember, like, the 2-mana clause on Frost Titan was less than this, and it ended up being pretty bad for people.
Well, it's not necessarily less than this. It can be. Like, some stuff your opponent might do, you might not... One, you could deal with... Like, it doesn't help you against sweepers or whatever. I guess the Frost Titan one doesn't either. But 2, they can potentially use it against you. No, I guess not. It's may copy. You're right. It's better than the Frost Titan. But it's still a 4/4 for 5 that doesn't do anything else. But talk to me about the backside, man. The Explore the Vastlands for 3 sorcery.
Yeah, so this card is too sharing for me. I remember that Jamie Wakefield used to talk about green as the color of sharing. This is a very greenish ability, and it feels very sharing. So, 3 colorless. Each player looks at the top 5 cards of their library, reveals a land card and or an instant or sorcery card from among them, then puts the cards they revealed this way into their hand, and the rest on the bottom of their library in a random order. Each player gains 3 life. I would not particularly want to play this card if they didn't get to do it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Neither half of this card is any good. But it does kind of speak to Kozilek, man.
Yeah?
Dude, Kozilek, man. This is like Kozilek, like somebody, this avatar is repping Kozilek, if you ask me.
It's like Kozilek's, little sister or something.
No, I don't know. I think they might. I don't know if they're just like, if this is an Eldrazi in disguise, or if this is just like the messenger to let us know what's up, that Kozilek is on his way. And it's also not trivial that Kozilek is on the sheet, on the list. So you can like randomly open Kozilek in a pack. There were some other Boros cards. While we're on the note of Boros, might as well look at a bunch. Like, one of them is probably pretty quick, but just to kind of just to put eyes on it, Rip Apart is your kind of card, right? Like red, white, deal 3 to target creature or planeswalker, or destroy target artifact or enchantment.
I mean, this card is obviously going to be one of the primary staples of the set. Like,
all the way up, too.
It's going to be 4 of in Pioneer. Like,
how is this not like this is just immediately a legacy card, right? And modern and everything else. I mean, a Braid is, and this is better than a Braid if you're Boros.
I mean, this card is substantially better than Disenchant.
No. You know what, though? It is a sorcery. Maybe it's not just straight better. It is a sorcery. I'll give you that. That's something. So maybe in the powered formats that ends up mattering more. But being able to hit a Planeswalker is so nice. And being able to hit enchantments. Anyway, this card is definitely a staple.
I don't know. I think this is probably going to be the most widely played card in the entire set, right? Up and down. Like, yeah, being a sorcery like is kind of bad, but like...
No, it's good in this set. This is part of Boros' jam. Oh, you mean compared to Instant?
Compared to Instant, right? But like, it's just like... I feel like it's like a Disenchant. Like, when you play a Disenchant, the bad part of Disenchant is it can't kill the creature that's going to kill you, right? Like, there are very few decks where a Volcanic Hammer or I don't know what's a Volcanic Hammer that can hit a Planeswalker or a Disenchant would all be...
Scorching Lava.
Yeah, like, they're not all going to be bad in almost any matchup, right? Like, so, I don't know. 5 stars.
Card's great. I don't think it's busted, but I think it's like a Braid in many ways. I think it's easy to underestimate how much this utility is going to pay off for you.
If you're into fair cards, this one's going to be heavily played.
I think it's got some chances for some unfair stuff, because sometimes you want to solve your problems and you don't want to use a lot of slots on them, you know?
Oh, you mean like when a Storm deck just randomly has 2 Lightning Bolts in the sideboard?
Like, right. If this is slot-efficient way to solve... And it kills a Hate Bear or a Lock enchantment. Like, this kills Rule of Law or Chalice of the Void or the Jailer or Thalia, whatever you want. This kills everything.
Oh, great point. Yeah. The fact that it can kill either kind of locking permanent is...
That's that reliability with how slot efficient it is going to be fantastic, I think. I think the card is live to show up in Vintage a little bit.
Wow.
So, dude, what do you think about Venerable? I don't think it's going to dominate formats. It's just going to be a good card. What about Venerable Warsinger? 3/3 Vigilance Trample for 1 red-white. It's a Spirit Cleric, so good types. And when it deals combat damage to a player, you can return target creature card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the amount of damage Venerable Warsinger dealt to that player. This is one of the sweet rares at the top that can give you a card extra every turn. When it deals combat damage to a player, you can return target creature card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the amount of damage Venerable Warsinger dealt to that player. So on the average, you can get something that's 3 or less for free.
This card's awesome, right? It starts with the Gnarled Mass stats, but it's drawings cards, right? Imagine you had cycling creatures, right? You could put them in, and it has trample. So
yeah, sometimes you do 1 or 2, and get back your 1-drop or your 2-drop.
Yeah, I think this card. I think this card isn't going to be
good combo with itself.
Widely played in like every kind of Boros deck, but like I think actually. Let me take that back. Imagine you were playing like a Boros mirror match, right? Like Boros creatures against Boros creatures, and you just trade it off. Isn't this a pretty great card to play after you've traded off? Right? Also, sure. You can stop their 2/2s, and it has a really outsized amount of return if you have any kind of giant growth type effects. And I do think that there's a lot of incentive to play some of the white creatures with giant growth type effects right now.
Dude, what do you think about Plarg, Dean of Chaos with this card, man? You play Plarg on 2, then Venerable Warsinger on 3. Already, 1, if they kill Plarg, you can get it back. 2, if they don't kill Plarg, you can loot something away so that then you can get it back.
Oh, yeah.
And then, and if the game stretches, Plarg can cascade 3, so you can go find Venerable Warsingers.
Yeah, so like if you go Plarg on turn 2, Venerable Warsinger on turn 3, swing with Venerable Warsinger, and they have to like decide if they're going to block or not, right? Like you could decide also what you were going to do with Plarg, right? Like let's say for sake of argument,
you can wait till after blockers and surprise them with what you're getting back.
You have 3 mana open, right? And you're like, all right, if they block Venerable Warsinger or kill it, I'm just going to cast the Venerable Warsinger in my hand. But if they don't, I'm going to discard the Venerable Warsinger, get it back for free, and then, leave mana open or something, right? Like, versus, you could discard a 1 or something if he's only going to trample over for 1 and then hard cast your 3-drop. Like, I like that. There's some good tactics to that.
Yeah. Now, at the end of the day, you're talking about a 3/3 for 3. So you can definitely get the worst of it from lots of things could potentially make you behind. But it's a solid card.
Nobody plays
a nice little image.
Nobody plays 3/3s for 3 because they thought that a 3/3 for 3 was a good combat rate. Right? Like, they play 3/3s for 3. Well, I mean, I did, but that was a very different world. Right? Like, they play 3/3s for 3 because they're doing something as part of their overall plan that's going to allow them to, like, inch into an advantage. Right? Like, you might not be the fastest deck, but you're not the slowest deck. You're, like, a kind of a fast deck probably that has routes to card advantage. And you're not the slowest deck, but part of your shtick is that you can put people on a clock. And the slowest deck usually can't put people on a clock with a 3-drop, right? They're, like, putting people on a clock with a 6-drop. So
I definitely think this isn't for the slow people, though. I think this is definitely for somebody kind of somewhere in the space between fast and medium fast.
Yeah, I agree. But I think, like, this is, like, a very good cleanup creature for medium.
3/3 Vigilance Trample, it's like a Scroll Thief, but it's a 3/3 Vigilance Trample, and then instead of just drawing a card, you get Selection and a Black Lotus.
I wish I could
things are going well.
disagree with anything you said, but I don't actually wish that. I agree with all of the things you said.
What do you think about Reconstruct History? 2 red-white sorcery, more of the graveyard shenanigans. It's return up to 1 target artifact card, 1 enchantment card, 1 target instant card, up to 1 target sorcery card, 1 target planeswalker card. Exile Reconstruct History.
That card
so 4 mana. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Stupidly powerful when you get when you have the correctly stocked graveyard.
When you get the draw 5.
Yeah, like,
With no creature. Remember, creature's not on the list.
Oh well. I'm building my deck in a certain way, right? Presumably, maybe I'll.
That's what I was telling you, man. Isn't this card sweet in the world where you're just imagining playing a big Boros deck?
Oh, come on! Like, how many decks did we play back in the day that had restock? A card that cost more than this and drew fewer cards, right? You restocked. You had to restock. Kai Buddha won. I don't know how many Grand Prix restocking.
So. It's fine.
I won a PTQ back in 1997 or so with the card Elvish Cash in my deck.
Dude, you know what's an You know what's an enchantment you can get back? Showdown at the Scalds.
Yes. If you want to be the slow Boros deck, that'll do it for you.
That's kind of a sweet way to do it, right?
I mean, Showdown of the Scalds is just. It's just so much better than the other cards that you can play in Standard. So I think, like, more Showdown. This is actually itself is a Showdown that shows down some more, right? Like, isn't it also? You have however many forecasting cost draw 5s you want. That's how many you can have.
So what do you think about Thrilling Discovery? It's like
it's awesome.
Thrilling. So red-white sorcery, gain 2 life. Then you may discard 2 cards. If you do, draw 3 cards. So you get your Cathartic Reunion and 2 life.
Yeah, I mean, it's just awesome.
And the Cathartic, and if you want, the Cathartic Reunion part is even optional. So you can just gain 2 life in a pinch.
Like, isn't this card like a? It's less powerful than Renewed Faith in some ways. Like, you can't just, like, hard cast it for 3 like you could with Renewed Faith. But if you're in it for the digging, this is like a, Renewed Faith was just a 4 of in all the decks that could use it back in the day.
Well, sort of. You can't really compare that because back in the day is different. You could use Revitalize so many times. Revitalize, which is fine. Revitalize does get played. Revitalize is a good card, but Revitalize is an instant that gains 3 and draws a card. So that's kind of your bar these days. This is a sorcery that only gains 2. However, this is a ton of digging. And if you have any graveyard interactions, which Boros in this set has a lot of, plus this card's a sorcery. There's a lot of sorcery interactions.
Yeah, I think
this card's going to be an important player in the new Boros.
I think this card is really good. One of the things that I like so much about it is if you have specialized types of removal, just get rid of them. And then, just draw random cards off the top of your deck, which just might be lands. But these days, your lands might be modal double-faced cards, or you just might get, that much closer to... I remember, you could play Think Twice, and I remember you made a deck, and you're like, all right, I have Think Twice, and Heezy convinced me to play Compulsive Research at the same time, and I was just, I don't know, Think Twice seems better. He's like, but you really just want to... You don't care how many cards you draw. You really just want to dig to your wrath when you're in trouble. This is a really good way to dig to your sweeper, I think. It buffers the turn that you're spending digging, because it gains you the 2 life, and your opponent is definitely going to eat the sweeper, right? You just drew 3 cards.
So, I don't know, man. One last card for the day on Boros is Hoffrey Ghostforged, 3 red-white for a 4/5 legendary dwarf cleric. Spirits you control get +1/+1 and have trample and haste, and whenever a non-token creature you control dies, exile it, and if you do, you get a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a spirit in addition to its other types, and it has, when this creature leaves the battlefield, return the exiled card to your graveyard.
All right, so first of all, the Lorehold school or whatever is just full of spirits, right? Everything we started with, Lorehold Excavation, and there's a bunch of other cards that just make 3/2 spirits, right? So if you're going to be on brand with Lorehold cards from Strixhaven, you might very well just have a bunch of spirits or spirit-making things. Or you just play spirits. I don't know. Could this be a Spirit Lord in a deck that might want a red?
I mean, it is a Spirit Lord, and there in some formats you can get whatever extra colors you want for free from all your Cavern of Souls type cards,
Yeah, and then it has this other ability, which, the opponent has to kind of kill Hoffrey, right? Or they can never beat you in an attrition fight.
You're getting a second copy of each of your creatures. I mean, this is a 5-cost card instead of a 4-cost like the black one that does something similar.
But they're also getting buffed because of Hoffrey's own ability.
True. But what about the combos, man?
You think you can just loop it up with this?
I mean, aren't there some ways so that you can, there's got to be some loops you can do where you're sacking and copying.
Yeah, I'm sure. I feel like most of the stuff that you would do with this is probably mana intensive, though, right? You can't just keep. I think when those other kind of things become abusive, it's because you tapped out for the last part of your combo, which this is a 5 casting cost card, right? And then you can utilize the resources that you have in play to machine gun the opponent, all at once. It's tough for me to imagine the way this card is structured that you would be able to do that.
I bet there's some combos. There's got to be. Well, I'll tell you what. In that case, let's leave on a different combo, which is every one of the are the chain cards just broken now? Chain of Smog, 1 in a black. This is all the way, way back in the day, Onslaught era. You get you can target player discards 2 cards, and then that player can play a copy of Chain of Bog, right? So a Chain of Smog. So you can just the combo here is with Magecraft. So for instance, you can use the new 1-drop they just revealed that's white for a 0/1 that has Magecraft +2/+2 until end of turn. So whenever you
Clever,
it's
Clever
Luminancer. Yeah,
that
Clever
was
Luminancer.
Literally the card I wanted to end on.
White for a 0/1 human wizard, and whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, Clever Luminmancer gets +2/+2 until end of turn. So if you just go turn 1 Clever Luminmancer, turn 2 Chain of Smog, you win. You do infinite.
So do you think that's a legacy viable thing to do?
Yeah.
It's got to be, right? So when I saw this card, I was just is this more a Glistener Elf or more a Soulscar Mage? Sounds like it's more of a Glistener Elf to you.
Well, in some formats, that combo is only legal in Legacy or whatever, right? But like this card's also a Soulscar mage in some formats, because some of the time you're just playing this and you're like, picture you're playing this in your burn deck or whatever. The problem is that it doesn't have haste, and you have to play a spell each turn just to get up to the level that that some of the other ones would have you at. So I think you really need to combine this with card draw. Like, I don't think it's good enough to just be playing with like lava spikes and stuff with this. I think you gotta be in for, if you're not going to play some big combo, you got to be in for cantrips.
I was thinking about like playing this in, just for sake of argument, modern Boros burn, and I came to the conclusion that I didn't think that I liked it that much. Like, one of the problems is I eventually came around on Soulscar Mage. Okay, that card's pretty good. But Soulscar Mage is good because it costs red on turn 1. And the decks that I play it in are very red intensive. And by that I mean they have a lot of mountains. And you can do stuff like get extra value by flashing back a lava dart. Right? Clever Lumimancer costs white. And like you're like, oh man, you look at a Boros mana base in Modern, they probably have like 18 sources of white, like when you count all the fetch lands, you count like Sunbay Canyons and stuff. Like, isn't that enough? I'm like, kind of. But those decks don't play Soulscar Mage. Like,
I also just think you're going to run out, because at least the Soulscar Mage attacks for 1. You know, like Monastery Swift Spirit, obviously getting haste is like an extra, but you're still attacking for 1 every turn, even without committing to play a spell. Clever Lumimancer requires you to commit, you know? It's kind of a Kiln Fiend in some ways.
I think this is a really good card. I think it's more likely to be
really good card?
I think it's very good.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think it's more likely to be good in a deck that wants to giant growth a lot than a deck that... Or like you were saying, like maybe a chain combo. To me, that's like giant growth.
Let's set that aside, because I grant you it's abusive. Magecraft and... like Chain of Smog is going to break with lots of Magecraft things. But let's set that aside for a minute. Is this card still good without that? Maybe?
Yeah, it seems to me like...
don't you want to have cantrips?
Okay, imagine...
it's kind of a Kiln Fiend, right?
Yeah, imagine you were playing like a deck that could play a white creature on the first turn, but had, you know... I just broadly use the term opts, right? Like cheap cards that draw a card, right? That keep your kind of velocity going. This seems like this would do an enormous amount of damage, especially if some of those cards were cards that actually buffed its offense. Like, imagine you were just like, you know, attack for like maybe 2 or 4 on turn 2, and then turn 3, like part of your instant sorcery cantrip sequence was just to become immense. Like it seems
particularly
like
if you've got like Teamer Battle Rage or whatever.
Yeah, or like it's in color combinations that allow you
to win. That's 20, right?
Yeah, you could also just like God's Willing this. You're in the correct colors. They can't stop you.
Well, God's Willing is a tough way to do it, because this really wants you to be able to play with proactive cards. You can, but it's not as reliable.
I'm saying,
the stuff with the complements, I guess, every card in your deck, I mean, it's fine. It's just every card that isn't like on message is kind of off message with a card like this. But yes, you can do it with God's Willing.
Like, do you think this is better or worse than some of those like heroic 1-drops from like Theros era? Like those decks, it's much better, right? And those decks played with like 14 creatures. Most of them stunk if you didn't have an enchantment on them. Like, this doesn't stink. Like, it's totally fine, and you can play like way less restrictive ways to buff these mage.
Yeah, but they're not creatures. The bar. They would not be playable today.
That deck took down a bazillion SCG top 8s.
Yeah, but those were different days.
All right. I'm just saying...
this card is good. I agree. This card's good. I just don't think it's great. It's potentially busted. But, like, setting aside the busted interactions, I think it's going to surprise people with how much of a... like, for instance, do you think this card's better or worse than Step Links?
Worse than Step Links.
Okay. Well, then maybe we're talking the same thing. Like, it's good, but it's not defining the format good.
I mean, if you wanted to play combo kill with Step Links, you could, right? Like, people do all those. There's those.
Yeah, but not for 2 mana. That's what makes this insane. Partly is that if you just do this with Chain of Smog, that's too unreal.
Yeah, but like, I mean, they haven't done it in a few years, so it's not as you can't do it. But like, people were just playing beatdown, green-white beatdown decks that had Step Links and a bunch of fetch lands in Modern, and then they just on turn 4 they just sacrifice all their lands, right? Go get a bunch of other lands, sacrifice all those, and like 20 you, right? Like,
yep.
this card could also get +2/+2 from that sequence. But so actually, you could tap a bunch of lands on the way. That would be cool.
Dude, Manamorphos's time is finally coming.
Oh man, maybe that card will be all right.
I think it will be. I think Manamorphose is finally going to be good.
Okay, favorite card? What do you got right now?
God, I don't know, man. What's your favorite card?
Excavation. I love it.
Oh my god,
I love it.
Oh my god, does it have to be one we talked about?
No.
Because maybe I'm like a weirdo, but man, I gotta admit, I kind of want to just draw a card for each different power among my creatures.
Well,
but
what if you have infinite power?
But I also just, at the end of the day, I don't know, man. This is weird, but I hope I don't end up wanting to play Plarg. But I could imagine Plarg making an honest man out of me.
Why? He's just so obviously good. Why wouldn't you want to play him?
Because he's so obviously good.
Like
I kind of want to win.
He just puts his pants on one leg at a time, right? Like, and then discards them. Then gets a different pair of pants.
But there is so much stuff, and we didn't even talk about Extus yet. So put me down maybe. You know what? Put me down for Valentine. I hope I don't play Valentine, but he's pretty great.
Valentine is my second favorite card.
All right. Awesome. All right. We'll see you next week when the Overlord kind of reveals what's really going on with the new Orzhov.
Bye-bye.
In life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge, it's a jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way not to lose my mind. Trapped in a vault with nothing but time. Parents and my friends were the key to find. Magic gave me purpose and drive. The game, the love, it kept me alive.